That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
That's bullshit.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Bullshit weekly show. I bet you guys thought I was coming back to do like fucking 60 episodes in 4 years again. And I've done what? I don't know, 5, 4, 5. I don't even fucking know. How many have I done? 4 or 5 or whatever. Let me give some shout out to some people who have been waiting. It seems like our biggest fan, Will's Hella Heat. He's everybody's biggest fan. I see this guy everywhere. Hey, Will. Small Town Exotics. You say first. I don't know. Will was here, dude. Will beat you by like a week, right? But you're a great sponsor and a wonderful man. Thank you a lot, Shane Kelly, Small Town Exotics. We're going to credit you more in a minute. Hey, Phil, what's up? How's it going, John? Infinite Possible. William Philippek. Oh, look, William says, oh, shit. I have been waiting for this for years. And he has. He's been saying, bro, when are you going to get Nick Mutton on? When are you going to get Nick Mutton on? When are you going to stop talking about so many fucking ball pythons and talk to this guy? And this guy don't want to talk no ball pythons. No, he don't. You should hear the pre-show. And do you know where you could hear the pre-show, however? Here's the trick. All right. William, this is a treat for you. For you. Just for you. I knew you were coming to hear just this guy. So I did this just for you. I decided that we were going to start doing a recorded pre-show and a really quick reported poach show. That way, when I reduce this audio down to the podcast, right, to put on all the platforms, and it's every fucking where, right? It's on Spotify, Apple, Google, you can't miss this shit. Just search BALLSH and the rest is searchable. Like it just pops right up. Right. And if you've been talking about this podcast, listening to this podcast, whispering in your sleep next to your wife about this fucking podcast, you probably see it showing up on your screen as it is because some algorithm has picked it up. So here's the thing. Audio only. You get bonus. You get more of me. Not that you really want more of me, but maybe more of him. Right. Some really juicy shit this guy said in fucking 12 minutes because I was nervous he was 3 minutes late to sound check and I didn't know if I had a guest or not. I was concerned. All right, so check it out. Hey, Bods, how are you doing? Heathen, great to see you. Hissy Fit, everybody, last Friday, this fucking guy knocked it out of the park. I mean, he didn't get to talk much because I went on, but that's not going to be tonight. Nick Mutton's going to shut me down. Trust me, he's going to shut it down. So go back last week, watch Hissy Fit. This dude's got so much integrity. If you've got any trouble in your marriage related to reptiles and your addiction and your hobby and your spending and your time, go watch this guy's shit. He's probably got some advice for you. I mean, I'm not saying he's Dr. Phil or anything, but he's definitely got something to say of value. Another savage sponsor in the house. And it looks like DTMG. You're going to be at the last guy I call out. Oh, wait a minute. Got to call Strange out since he jumped in as a sponsor, you know. So thank you guys all for coming in. Let me go through real quick our sponsors of this wonderful show, starting with my new exoticsbynature.com website I've been working on. It basically just links to my MorphMarket page. I didn't do anything special, including fuck up some graphics. So anyway, the new exoticsbynature.com is coming. We're going to have like products and stuff on there. Not a lot, like Pangea stuff, some people that I like, supporting some brands that I like. Also invertebrates and everything. We'll have all the isopods and all that kind of stuff for your bioactive needs up there. I bet you didn't know I did isopods. Check out my Facebook page because I posted some photos a while back and I'm going to be posting a lot more badass macro photos. And on the isopod front, coming up soon, on the Bullshit podcast, we're going to be going through all these fun isopods with isopod.com himself, Ben Quintana, coming on the Off Topic Tuesday soon. You very well might not be interested, but dude, some of these bugs are worth fucking money. Did you know, ball python people, that Bob Vu is collecting isopods, and he has some absolutely insane Cuban spiky isopods that you must see? Anyway, on with the rest. MorphMarket, I couldn't play the video today because it turns out that I didn't have Dave Kaufman's permission to use his voice, and he's not mad or anything, but MorphMarket doesn't want me using the video with Dave's voice. So until I can dub it in my sexy fucking voice, we just got to look at the page and say morphmarket.com. You know them. They didn't need to sponsor me, but they did anyway. And there they are. C-SERPENTS, been a sponsor forever. Rock Systems, Incubators. You all know him. He's already backed up long enough. Look, 4 to 6 week lead time. He started on a 10-day turnaround whenever I started with Chris. So, sorry, guys. Reptiles to You, the new sponsor of the Bullshit podcast, our official shipper of Exotics by Nature and of Bullshit podcast stuff currently. Go to Reptiles to You. I got a coupon code coming for you, but it's going to start on Friday. I could have started it today, but it's just too much to jam in with this badass motherfucker I got in the waiting room. There's me, Exotics by Nature Co. on Instagram. It's Exotics by Nature's thing. I only have almost 3,000 measly followers, but you can go through and see all kinds of cool stuff, not just fucking ball pythons. Yeah, there's a lot of fucking ball pythons. All right. Yeah. But anyway, go back and look at like the two-headed snake, the two-headed corn snake I have called Hydra. Look at how insane Hydra is. She's the longest bicep snake that I've ever seen. And she eats great. She's a year old and she's in the other room right here. I hope to have her on Off Topic Tuesday when we talk about corn snakes one day with a famous corn snake guy. Infinite possible pythons. See, Nathan, I got it right today. John Woodruff, I'm running through you guys quick because you know what? I don't know if you're going to sponsor this one. You might very well be the sponsor of the Bullshit podcast that happens with featured people about ball pythons and stuff. But I think Off Topic Tuesday might take a little cut to the side here. And we might get some sponsors that aren't you guys. And I hope you're not mad, but I'm still going to pimp you. Reptile Collective, I wish I heard from you more. Hopefully we could do a show. Savage, you're savage and you're here. Shane Kelly, you're savage. Sorry, savages. You got to share it. You got to be a foursome with Shane and his old lady because this dude with 16.1 thousand followers I just saw he just sponsored the Snakes and the Fat Man podcast. So apparently Shane Kelly's about spreading the love. So share the love. And Mr. Josh Strange Creations. Look at him sharing stuff, sharing Chris's stuff, sharing my stuff. There he is, sharing the love again. And this fucking page here, this bullshit Patreon page, you can go to it. You can go to it and you can be one of the 3 motherfuckers that are actually giving me money. And I don't even know if they still know that they are. So I don't know. You can if you want to, but I'm not really pushing it right now because I'm not about paywalling a bunch of shit. And on that note, let me go over here and go to, well, you know, he said he doesn't have an Instagram page. So I'm just going to shrink this down and I'm going to bring this dude on in his green screen that's green as fuck. I wish I could like make the green screen green for you, but it would just be a strip in the room. Mr. Nick Mutton, here he is. Yeah, one of shitty soundboards since the last time. How are you?
Good, really good.
Awesome. Sorry about that long shit roll, but it was only 8 minutes.
Only 8 minutes.
8 minutes and 40 seconds. So you said you were starting a podcast and you couldn't quite get it off the ground. Can you monologue? That's the key.
Oh yeah, I can talk forever. That's not, my ability to talk is notorious. It's more just kind of coordinating schedules with various academic guests and when you can get them to
academic guests that they won't commit because they have too much shit to do.
It's harder to get academics because most of them they're scientists, but sort of by definition. So most of them don't really care about the hobby side of things. So while you can sometimes get them, they're harder to get, and you really got to work. And they're all in Australia. It seems like you're always working around weird work schedules and time differences.
Well, my question for you is: do they always say the same thing that the motherfuckers tell me? I don't know what interesting things I have to say. I don't think I'm that interesting.
I just tell them what I think is interesting because I've read their papers they publish, and I'll just talk about A, B, and C and just a little bit of guidance.
Okay, so you can monologue. You can guide your guests down the road. What's your fucking excuse? You got a green screen. All right, so we get 3 on
the green screen. Well,
the green screen. I mean,
honestly, I was supposed to record like last week, and my desktop computer, the headphone jack died, and I could not figure out why. Nothing was working. I could never hear audio. And turns out the the old school headphone jack just died. So I had to, once I figured that out, it was, but by then, you know, everybody's too busy and had to reschedule for October. So it's just
right.
I'll be recording within the next week or two. I'll start getting stuff recorded, but it's
So what's the name of the podcast?
Beneath the Scales.
Beneath
struggle
the
with the
Scales,
name,
where we
but-
only talk about scaleless reptiles, right?
Exactly.
We only talk about the scaleless gene, scaleless ball pythons, scaleless death adders, scaleless corn snakes, and how they came from scaleless rat
You're
snakes.
gonna hit me with the hot takes on scaleless snakes or something.
Oh man, come on! I'm a big scaleless corn snake guy. I'm a huge scaleless corn snake guy at heart.
But
But then
those-
again, I've been a morph corn snake guy since I was a kid, right?
With
So
scaleless snake mutations, you have broadly two different types. You've got scaleless mutations that have ventral scales still,
there you
and
go.
occasional body scales. And then you have ones that are other mutations that are versions of that sort of mutation that are completely scaleless. And what you find invariably is that the ones that have belly scales do all right.
Yeah, they do
The
great.
ones that don't have belly scales
Are
don't.
a fucking mess. Are a
They don't.
fucking disaster.
They
Are
don't.
an absolute
It's-
fucking disaster.
There was a rattlesnake. I can't remember the species that had the scaleless mutation had bolt. It would throw some that had ventrals and some that did not, and the mutation was just perennially kept alive by the ones that had scales.
Wow.
And we have the ones that don't. They just.
I
don't.
often fear that for the ball pythons, but I think that people have gotten them over some humps, but they definitely won't have a flawless adult as an adult. I don't know that it's possible to not have like keloiding or scarring or
Yeah,
anything.
it's like you're kind of.
Google notification.
You might be a bridge too far.
Yeah, I fear it. Now are the death adders belly scaled or no?
I am not entirely sure. I
I
feel like
thought
should
they
know
were
that.
scaleless bellied as well. They were scaleless all around. But then again, they might do better because they can deal with such dry conditions, right?
Yeah, I mean, most people
That
don't
might
realize.
work.
Most people don't realize with ball pythons is they actually need a fair bit of humidity. They might live
Yeah.
in equatorial Africa, but they spend most of their lives underground in a moist burrow.
Let me
They're
see if you
not-
can appreciate my analogy here. I tell people about ball pythons that if you breed for scaleless ball pythons, you're breeding ball pythons to hatch an elephant trunk snake. I was like, most people that keep ball pythons cannot keep an elephant trunk snake alive.
Who can? Like, I'd love to have
My
an drone
employee
snake.
can,
Like,
my employee can, but she's kind of a nerd when it comes to weird boggy shit.
they
She's
are
good
really-
with weird boggy shit. I don't know why. She's just good at it.
I always thought the Acrocordidae family was pretty cool because they're not really pythons, but they're kind of python adjacent.
Yeah.
They're a very primitive lineage.
Yeah. Very cool. So wait a minute. Nick Mutton, what's your fucking history, dude? Bring me down the road. I mean, we literally met like whatever minutes ago, like 30 minutes ago. I've never really spoken to this man in my life.
I would say, I mean, it's probably not that unusual of a story. Most herpers would find familiar. I mean, I was just always that kid that was catching lizards and snakes and whatever and giving my teacher spits at recess, that sort of thing. And then I had parents that kind of put up with a lot and kind of fostered that. And then there's that point in your early 20s and you're living on your own. And then you realize that the light bulb goes off. Holy crap, I can have whatever crazy pet I want now. So I got an
Mama
iguana.
can't tell me nothing. Right. Mama
Exactly.
can't tell me no.
So I got a green iguana, which then turned into 5 green iguanas, which then turned into rarer species of iguana. And then I got snakes. I started with, a mainland reticulated python. Back when you could get pure reticulated pythons and they weren't all hybridized. But and then one python became many and keeping became breeding. And then eventually you make the leap and turn pro, I guess.
You make the leap and turn frustrated.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good job. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's, as you know, as someone who works with animals for a living, you probably have those friends that think you live this glamorous life and it's like really mostly just feces removal. Like 80% of my day is like just scraping poo off a tub with a putty knife or something. It's not the most glamorous.
No, it's not glamorous, but at the same time, you're worldly as fuck, right? I mean, didn't it make Earth tiny?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if you've been able to travel much, but that's.
No, I haven't. No, I'm.
It's one of those things I've made that a priority in my life, since I was a younger adult and many years ago. I'll be 50 here in a few minutes, but traveling around the world and seeing the rest of the world firsthand is a an experience everybody needs to have. I get very intolerant of like people with like really like strong opinions about stuff they don't understand. They've never left their state they live in, much less the country. They don't know anything about.
I've never left the country, and since I'm a
Really?
paraplegic, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you I probably won't anytime in my years of being like, I don't know. I just don't really see myself going outside of my comfort zone for my own personal self, but that also applies to zero people in this industry, but like maybe a few. Obviously not zero. There's quite a few guys that are running para and doing this as a para hobbyist and stuff, but to be able to be where I am physically and have my brain I have, like, honestly, Nick, that ship has sailed for me, you know, and it's only because I can't be the one out there diving in the crevice after the juvenile black-headed python. You know what I mean? I can't be the one that's out there with somebody saying, look out for that fertile ants right next to you, bro. You almost got fucking dead. You know, I can't be that guy. I would love to be that guy. I would love to be bounding around in the forest and such, but at this point, being not very mobile, I got to take your word for it. You know what I mean? But I will honestly live vicariously through my friends such as you and Dave Kaufman and people that want to just stomp the earth and show us the shit that's under a rock. And to that avail, back to the, like what I did say about the MorphMarket thing earlier about Dave, I really, really loved that he took the initiative to do the ball python video. Whether you liked the video or not, whether you cared about what he did in the video or not, just the initiative, the time, the effort that some of you guys go through to travel around and write books and document the shit. Honestly, for guys like me that are fucking couch potatoes, if you want to call me that, then you know what? I'll be an armchair quarterback with you. You know, I'll go out there and run the plays with you. You know, that's it. You know, and I appreciate that. I do. I appreciate that. I appreciate the many books I have on my shelf over here. So you are an author, correct?
Indeed.
Right. So tell me about these books and things that you've written. Talk to me about that.
First book was The Complete Carpet Python, which I can't believe how old I'm getting, but that was 11 years ago.
Can you believe that that's already that long?
Yeah. And then a few years after that, did the Children's Python book, which is, I wasn't that thrilled with the name of that because it implies it's a book about children's python or
and not Antaresia,
a children's book about pythons. And when it's really about an entire genus.
Yeah.
I don't get to pick everything. I have co-authors and publishers.
I see.
So
Who wrote that one? Who wrote that one with you? Because that's actually one that, you know, I actually wrote.
Yeah.
Look at this shit. Antoine. I didn't know Sean jumped out of planes. That's what a paraplegic does. Yeah, no, I'm not quite that para. I wish para worked for that, Antoine. But there are plenty of paraplegic skydivers. I will give them credit. I mean, there are plenty of dudes that are risking brain injury after all their spinal injury. It's definitely there. You know, it's not me though. Not me. I'm cautious of big bumps, bro. So yeah, dude. I mean, the Antaresia is really near and dear to me. So who wrote that book with you?
My perennial collaborator, Joseph Julander.
Okay. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And Julander and I are friends on Facebook. He'd be a great one to have on here as well. Maybe you can prod him to come on my show.
Yeah, I talk to him pretty regularly. We have a good rapport as far as writing. Having a co-author when you're writing a big book that's research heavy it's really difficult to find somebody that pulls their weight and knows what they're doing and contributes to the level they should and is professional about it. Everybody wants to do it, and then a lot of people, frankly, don't live up to expectations. So Justin and I have a good rapport. We've done it 3 times now, and we're working on another book right now. The new Carpet Python 2nd edition is imminently going to be out. I have an advanced copy of it sitting on my desk. But
who's publishing for you? Eco?
Eco.
Okay, great.
The new edition is not really a 2nd edition. I mean, a traditional 2nd edition, you take the old book, you throw in a bonus chapter, a few new pictures on a new cover. Ta-da!
It's not just an addendum.
Oh no,
really,
no,
it's an entire rewrite. Okay. And I'm looking forward to that because, to be honest with you, I did not read the first one, and I can use the knowledge.
I can honestly say there's not a single paragraph that has not been rewritten in the book, and it's double the size. So the first edition is, I think, 339 pages, and the new edition is 642 pages. It weighs almost 4 pounds. It's this giant.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's.
And Bob
And-
didn't tell you to cut that back, huh?
No, Bob was like, he seemed to have confidence in the whole thing.
But
He's
it's
like,
Bob, right? When did Bob not want to put it down? Right? I
Bob?
mean, he wants to put it down. He always helped me with this podcast back in the day. He was always willing to put it down.
I can't say anything bad about Bob. He's been great as a publisher, and
Yeah.
Russ Gurley is our editor. But they don't really put any. It's like just
as long as Russ isn't editing a ball python book, let me just say, because him editing Nerd's book was a fucking nightmare.
Well,
Like, I was a motherfucking night. Like, dude, I've got pictures in there of animals that I produced first that are credited to motherfuckers that never did anything in this business. Like, they just fucking like, oh my God. He destroyed that book, but it's fine. It's Russ. I often
can
joke
honestly
that,
say that through 3 books, Russ has never altered even a single word we ever wrote. It is
Right.
exactly what we wrote. He checks for spelling and syntax and that kind of stuff. He organizes the structure, but he hasn't. No, I mean, we've had complete latitude to do what we want to do with no real restrictions and nobody, meddling with anything, and that's been nice. So yeah, we changed every single picture. I think there's 4 or 5 pictures in the whole book that are the same from the first edition.
really.
So out of 600,
So you completely fucking reinvented the wheel there. I mean, you completely redid it.
I mean, it would be disingenuous to say that we all have an ego, don't we? Everybody does.
Yeah, I'm not gonna just.
No, we all do, and it's like people pretend they don't, but they do. We all do. It's normal.
The more complete ball python book, I hope they do, Phil William.
We wanted to do a book that was so big, so thorough, and so in-depth that no one would even attempt to write another book on this subject for like 20 years because you don't want to be compared to this giant thing.
And honestly, that's great. I mean, it needs to happen. Again, I refer to the Ross and Marzak reproductive husbandry book on this channel all the time. And of course, it's lost to people here. A landmark
book.
Yeah. And I showed it to Chris because Chris was like, I don't really think that people are interested in what the Australian carpet python or children's python breeder would have to say about production. And I'm like, dude, how do you think I learned? I learned by watching this, like seeing a calendar with this line on it of, oh, this is breeding season. This is breeding season. Like I just hit up, I just hit up Garrett with the dwarf, retics. I'm sure you don't have great feelings about super dwarf retics either.
I like super dwarf retics. I don't like people have done to them.
Right. You don't like morphing them with mainlands. If they were pure Kalatoa, you'd be beautiful with that. Yeah, well, right. You're fine with it.
The only thing those dwarf retics have going for them is that they're little. And as soon as you breed into some mainland morph monstrosity, you've just made nothing but hybrid snakes that are not going to be that small. And
my biggest concern was the law that if the government illegalized it, it would still be reticulatus. So why would it ever matter? But at the same time, I still have 2 market-wise incredibly valuable adult females here that I really would be a fool not to put into a program of some sort. So whether I'm doing them or he's doing them, I just want them done, but they're a mess. They're like what you said. They're a morphed out, but then rebred back. I'm not down with it, bro. But then again, I'm not out there trying to say I want to breed Hog Island boas that came from Hog Island, because if I did, I'd only be able to buy them from Vin Russo, and that's it. Right?
Yeah.
At this point, unless I found some zoo or some program that had, Chaos de Cocochinos boas that they were gonna like say, oh, we have a couple that we need to just find homes for. I'd be like, oh yeah, I would love that. I would love that if it's on an education permit and they really fucking came from there. But the odds of that happening, not happening.
Hog Island boas aren't that genetically distinct from their mainland counterparts. They haven't been separated all that long.
No.
But the problem with retics is that, and granted, the retic people didn't know this, but they should know it now, is that retics are not one snake. Retics are probably 7 or 8 different species.
That's what I was going to ask you about, was how many different subspecies did you think retics should be busted down into?
Oh, some of them would be full species. Like, these are not the same snake at all. And but they've just bred them all together for so long, and now you can never import clean wild blood again because of the Lacey-Act stuff. So there's an ample body of scientific research and molecular analysis that shows like 7 different clades of retics. some of those papers, they, as is fashionable these days, they will stop short of naming a new species for whatever reason. I don't know why. They do all the work, show unequivocally that something's its own thing, and then don't name it. I don't know whether it's some fear of being proven wrong later or what. I don't quite get that, but that happens a lot. But you see the Halmahera, Ternate, those retics are like a thing. The Salar ones are a thing. All the dwarf retics are a different thing. The Philippine retics are a different thing. There are all these different retics, and there are 18,000 islands in Indonesia, and there are retics on most of them.
You know, I just
west of the Wallace Line has retics on it, and to think there's not a bunch more on top of the ones we already know about, it's, I don't know. I think when you take these insular island forms that evolved in isolation for however long, and they've developed their own genetic identity, their own morphological identity, and then you hybridize them, you basically just ruined everything about them that made them unique and special and different. You undid all of that. And it's not, to me, to undo all that for the sake of putting albino in something is just, and making a snake that's not going to be appreciably smaller. It just seems like it's not a good trade. What you're getting is novelty. It's a waste of time. It's a novelty item that in 20 years, okay, look at this way with the retics, and we'll hot take on the retic guys, and they can hate on me, and that's fine.
No, that's fine, because we're not hating on ball python people right now, and I'm trying to build a fucking audience in the new channel, bro.
No, I'm just, it's like, we cannot get new retics. What we have is what we have. And you would think that the little bit of pure insular retics that are around, that it would become incumbent on those that had those to preserve what little bit we have left that hasn't already been spoiled. And they don't. They're still making, you know, Calatoa morph crosses and stuff. Why are you doing that? These people look at this and honestly, and to themselves, like, and do they really think that in 20 years, the people who are in the hobby then are going to really be thanking them for making some super dwarf albino tiger? Fuck no, they're not. They're going to be cursing their name because they don't get to work with these insular forms ever again, because somebody 20 years earlier decided for them that they would just ruin the gene pool. And that's what they're doing. And they're still doing it. It's
right.
It's
so,
like,
okay. So let's say real quick right now, this is fucking gold, guys. You need to do what Kike said. You need to smash that like, and you need to subscribe to this shit. And you need to set the notification bell so I can bring more hard motherfuckers like this guy back to this channel, so that we can talk to them about the real deal, about what's going on. So now what he's not saying is what he thinks about ball pythons. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But wait. What we can preface here is that ball python people, with our few very distinct locality specific variances of ball python, we are not fucking up the natural history of Python regius in the Gold Coast, in the Ivory Coast of Africa. We're not fucking that up. However, I completely understand what you mean. I went down this road with people with blood pythons fucking 15 years ago, when the Borneo crowd started to get like antsy about wanting some of these other mutations. Like, we want an albino. Just because you want an albino doesn't mean you go jump into Brongersmai or into Curtis and pull an albino into your line and make an albino Borneo, because it doesn't work that way. At least we can say that the ball python mutated amongst itself, and it didn't mutate amongst 20,000 some odd islands, right? Just to round up. Because look, I just came from the coral business, bro. I just shut my aquarium store. I had an aquarium store for 3.5 years. I've imported from Indo. I'm familiar with the way it's laid out and all the different localities and everything else. And it brings me to another valuable question I want people to know about Indonesia. How do you feel the accuracy is of Indonesia to be able to, like, this is just a personal question of mine. This isn't anything anybody ever arose. But do you think the, like, Calatoas from Calatoa, or is this just like Guyana and Suriname boas, where whatever's selling the best on Crutchfield's price list is what's being imported into the country?
It's a murky picture. It's not as bad as people think it is. A lot of this idea that you can't trust imports and the localities are just, they just slap those names on, that's mostly has its basis firmly in the bullshit department. This is people that are making mixed or unknown animals in captivity, and they don't want to compete against locality animals that might be perceived as more desirable. So the result is you poison the well. This happened big time with the chondro people. Like when chondros were rare and the only thing you get were captive bred ones for the most part, and imports were uncommon and unreliable, they made all these mutt chondros, which are just hybrided out to, to the ends of the earth. And then when imported locality animals started coming in, they tried to crush the demand for such things by pissing all over the idea of locality chondros. You don't want those. You can't really trust.
That's what I wanted to get at. PNG, okay? PNG, okay? I was taught chondros by reading a popular complete book that told me I couldn't sex juvenile chondros, which is a fucking lie.
It also that's the easiest lie to take in that book. Like there's
that's a fucking lie.
There's a few parts of that book that have led to more dead chondros. Like it literally says like, don't try to breed your females until they're 1,000 grams, and I'm like, 1,000 grams? Are you out of your freaking
right?
mind?
That's crazy. Yeah, that's wild.
Fun fact, the average adult wild green tree python, averaged among all species, is 350 grams.
Yeah, right. You got. I was going to say 300. I was going to say 300 grams.
Like 90% are under 500 grams. It's only a very few that are even over 500.
Right.
And so if you raise these things to the size of a jungle carpet python, and then they seem somehow surprised why the snake lays 57 eggs, only 2 eggs hatch, and the snake's dead by its 8th birthday. Because if you put it in human terms, it would be like a woman deciding to not have a baby until she weighed at least 700 pounds. And then you wonder, like, well, what could possibly go wrong with that? Well,
yeah, right.
A lot. Like
everything,
not a healthy body size.
Everything. Come down to the south and see all of our NICUs, bro. You want to know? Come down south and see all the neonatal intensive care units here.
When any species, a member of any species, achieves like an unusually large body size for its given species, the results are always the same, and they are poor reproductive output and shortened life expectancy every time. Every time.
Yeah, I agree. So wait, so in that book, there was 3 localities of green tree, right? There was Aru, there was Biak, and there was PNG, right? Because he just generalized PNG, right? Papua New Guinea, because he said no locality from any, because you know who the locality source was, right? Who was the only locality source here? Cameron, right? Bushmaster. Bushmaster was the only fucking source for locality. So I don't know if I ever trusted Cameron on the localities of those snakes, but it certainly seemed like it had some merit. I mean, my Arus were green. My Biaks were usually mean as fuck and yellowish. And I never really got misled. But like when I bought a Manakawari versus a whatever, I don't know if that was really what I was buying, right? Like, so.
You can now. It's pretty, if you know what to look for, if you gave me 100 mixed adult chondros, they're all wild caught from all over the place, and you asked me to sort them by species, I could probably do it with 99 to 100% accuracy just by looking at them.
Wow. That's pretty interesting.
There are distinct, consistent morphological differences. And if you don't, a lot of these chondro guys are just completely oblivious to these things because they don't pay enough attention to it, but it is nonetheless true. And it's easy to tell when a Aru is an Aru. It is easy to tell. Now, could you tell a Cape York, an Iron Range Australian chondro from a Rookie chondro? Probably not.
Probably not.
There is,
but to illustrate for people that are watching this, the tip goes down and the tip goes up. So some motherfuckers could possibly swim in a bad storm or something.
You would have had, you could have walked from New Guinea to Australia 6,000 years ago without getting your feet wet. They were still connected as a recently.
Okay, so there was a land bridge, right?
But there's no northern population. You have to go south quite a ways before you get to.
Yeah, because the albino chondro was originally said to be a Maruki, right?
Yeah.
And so I bought a ton of Maruki stuff that came in right about the time as that, just hoping to fucking maybe. Yeah, but of course that didn't work out. But whatever.
Localities or chondros are generally accurate in sort of the macro sense. If you think that your Maruki chondros are coming from actually Maruki, that's a city. There's no chondros in a city. It's like if you drew like a 40-mile circle around the city, that's about what you're looking at. It's you need to look at them as a regional locality. And then you've got biogeographic regions that are separated and are not interbreeding with each other. The whole southern lowlands, which is called the Papuan Basin, on both sides of PNG and the southern bit of the Indonesian side, that is all one snake. All the chondros are genetically the same. All the white-lip pythons in the habitat arc are the same. All the carpet pythons.
Yeah, just that isolated.
It's one, yeah, because you have this giant mountain range that keeps all that southern stuff southern. The
Right.
Bird's Head Peninsula is its own biogeographic region that doesn't really interbreed with enough. And then the northern coast is its own biogeographic region. So on mainland New Guinea, you have 3 distinct lowland rainforest patches that aren't interbreeding with each other. And the animals in all those patches are different. The chondra, everything you find in all those places are different in those places. And that holds true. It doesn't matter if you're talking about scrub pythons or chondros or white-lip pythons or whatever it is.
Right. I almost got sucked into high-end chondros, bro. Almost. I was so close. And then I saw the micro market that was being created by just 2 people. And I reached back in my memory of the first time I met one of the ones that's responsible for every fucking ball python and every boa that has a high price on it. Fuck. Why am I drawing a blank, dude? In Florida with chondros from back in the day, selling them for stupid money. Come on, older guy. Why am I struggling? Why am I struggling? Big giant company, wholesales tons of shit. Come on.
Eugene Bissett?
Eugene Bissett. Thank you. Fuck, man. Eugene would never listen to this podcast, so I know he won't be insulted by me forgetting his fucking name. He won't do this podcast either. He likes to tease me. When we used to go to shows, he'd be like, "Hey, Sean, did you bring your gear?" Yep. Still not recording. And I'm like, I didn't come for you anyway, bro. I said, besides, if I wanted to record you, I'd just talk to you and I wouldn't even fucking tell you. It's just like Mark Bell. That's it. But Eugene, when I met Eugene Bissett, he was coming around that stack of visions to tell somebody to get the fuck away from you. Get the fuck away from here. If you don't like the fucking prices and you're too fucking poor to pay it, you walk the fuck. And I was like, I was 15 years old, dude. I was scared of fucking death. I was scared. I was mortified. I looked like I was 12. He didn't fucking care. He almost run into me while I was standing there. All because the dude, you know what he was doing? He was back there with Trooper and they were just fucking off. And they had taken all of those wild caught chondros that they bought for $100, and they put them up for 20,000 and 15,000, and that's where Greg Maxwell supposedly bought the computer chondro, the calico that started his whole calico line or something, was from them at one of those shows. And I'm just like, dude, it was such a market of 2 old guys sitting there saying, you know what we could do? We could fucking charge $10,000 for this shit. And then somebody came and paid $10,000 and they looked at each other and they're like, what the fuck? Let's charge 20. And that's ultimately like Bob Clark releasing the albino ball python for $9,500 because he didn't think a fucking ball python would pull 5 digits. He didn't think there was any way that a ball python would pull 5 digits. And then Pete Call had pied and was like $40K a pair, sold out for 3 fucking years. Everybody else is like, shit, dude, that albino could have been, you know, but you watch those morphs and stuff carry through. And dude, talk to me about ball pythons some. I mean, like, I love your perspective on retics. Okay. We can't hate on those guys anymore because they will kill us and they will feed us to their shit. Okay. They will cut us up. They have meat saws. I've seen them. You know, I met a guy in Tinley that had 300 breeding females that was at the auction to benefit U.S. ARC. Talk about an oxymoron.
Yeah, the reality, and the big snake people don't want it, will never acknowledge this, but it is nonetheless completely true. Virtually 100% of all of the hobby's problems vis-a-vis legislation and governments trying to outlaw things, it's always the big snakes.
That's
it's
right.
retics and burbs.
That's
it's
right.
Never, it's never the ball pythons. It's never the children's pythons. It's this one tiny sector that is 100% of our problem. And the odd venomous guy whose cobras escape. It's just a small percentage.
And that's a very odd guy, right? That's a very odd guy for a venomous guy. And even then, guess what? The venomous guy's out there with a fucking flashlight looking for his shit all night. He's got a search party on for his shit. Meanwhile, the retic guy can't count.
I think that with the ball pythons, it's a little different thing, and that ball pythons, you know, with the exception of the people hybridizing ball python morphs into other species, which is pretty abhorrent.
Now, listen, that's where I wanted to get at, because William brought this up. We're starting to see a lot more angry balls and super balls getting bred back into ball pythons. That is massively detrimental. And I'll bring us back real quick to when I think it was Bob Clark that made the albino ball berm hybrid years ago, right? The albino ball berm. And it was, this title of this post was, "What should we name this?" And I wrote in all caps, "Undeniable, unbelievable clusterfuck." And everyone hated on me because the thing was like the finest thing online and all this other shit. Dude, it was pretty fucking apparent that it was a fucking disaster waiting to happen, that somebody was going to try again. I got a lot. I'm not gonna lie though. When Kevin at Nerd and I geeked out together looking at carpondros, I'm not gonna lie, I really liked what I was seeing. I liked the Dr. Frankenstein, but he would also be probably one to say that he would hope that it would never dilute a natural line.
But it does.
It always does. It always does.
There's the people that hybridize snakes and do these sorts of things. There's this sort of comfortable lie that they all tell themselves to assuage their conscience, and they tell it to everybody else. And that is, and the lie is as follows: as long as you honestly represent your whatever thing you've made, it won't be a problem, which is complete and utter bullshit. Like it's always a problem. The reality is that most snakes have multiple owners throughout their lives. And eventually that inconvenient thing where your ball python is actually 12% Angolan python kind of gets forgotten. Because as soon as who wants a 12% Angolan python? Absolutely nobody. Nobody wants that. So they just forget to mention that. And you see this sort of cavalier attitude about like high percentage hybrids. And I was on a chondro group relatively recently, and someone's like, "Show me pictures of your Biak chondros." And they're like, half of them weren't Biaks. They were like Biak hybrids. Like, if it's not all Biak, it's not a Biak. That's pretty simple. It's not that. Like now I see people posting their albino Brettles pythons from mostly Australians. Like, you don't have
right. So you got a fucking Darwin albino mixed in there.
You gotta have 50% Darwin, 50% Brettles that's amelanistic. It is not, and nor will it ever be. No matter how many times you do that, it will never be that.
And, the albino boa constrictor back in the day, and then the real albino Surinames came in that were unquestionably pure, right? Yet everyone doubted them. They were unquestionably pure because fucking Mike had strictly brought them in from South America illegally, I'm sure. So I'm sure they were undeniably real, because of the lengths that dude would go through for that kind of shit. But,
I think that where a hobby has really lost its way, and the retic and ball people especially.
All right, stop. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do
it. We are so doing this.
Okay, then tell me about the subspecies of Regius then. If you're going to do that, then
I'm not talking about that. That's not where I wasn't talking about hybridization.
Okay, all right. Because wait, we gotta firmly draw a fucking line in these people profiting off of the natural mutations of one species and the motherfuckers that are mixing 19,000 islands worth of shit together.
You have two big problems. One, you have far less hybridization with ball pythons, and you can still get more of them. With retics, you have almost entirely hybridization, and you can't replace the gene pool. So you're fucking something up that can never be repaired.
All right, so I'm going to hit mute because Ball Python Project says, "Let's hear it, baby. Let's give it to him." He says he's going to give you the 1-2 punch. I will tell you, you must listen to the audio only version of this because you'll hear more. But no, come on, give me the truth, bro. I am ready for enlightenment. That's why I started off Topic Tuesday. Enlighten me.
In my estimation, and I'm not the only one, the ball python community has lost its way in the following sense. They no longer have any appreciation whatsoever for actually ball pythons. They honestly, most of them seem to detest ball pythons, in that if you have the unforgivable sin of hatching a normal wild type ball python, oftentimes these get frozen off discreetly and sold as feeder snakes.
Yeah, the cobra food thing's kind of nasty.
If you feel you need, if the normal natural form of the species you profess to love is so abhorrent to you that you feel you need to kill them immediately and sell them off as feeders because they're not even worthy of putting a single mouse into, that's fucked up. you've lost your way at that point. Like, I'm not saying that morphs are bad, but it's so, if all you ball python people, most of them, and I know nothing ever applies to everyone, but the vast majority seem to, they don't really give a crap about ball pythons. What they care about is morphs. They could give a shit about a ball python. It's just that's the canvas with all the morphs on it. So that's where they're at. It's like, I think if you've lost any appreciation for the natural beauty of a ball python, is a cool snake. It doesn't need to be a morph. It's cool in its own right. And if you completely lost that entirely, what are you doing? Like, and I'm not saying, I mean, I have ball python morphs. There's nothing wrong with breeding mutant ball pythons, but at the point where like you wouldn't even, you have 0 normals, you would never even own a normal one. And if you hatch one out, you're just going to put it in the freezer. You've gone too far. That's an unhealthy mindset, in my opinion. Like I breed carpet morphs, all kinds of them. And I also make wild type ones. I would never like, oh, I better kill these normal coastal carpets because they're not xanthic or whatever. That's crazy. Like I appreciate the natural forms and mutant forms. But the ball python people, there's no appreciation for their normal ball pythons at all. And in fact, they are mostly just, they're throwaways, giveaways. Last time I hatched a normal ball python was like 8 years ago. And it was an accident. And the only reason I was able to find anyone to take it off my hands was because A, it was a female, and I gave it to him for $15. And it was a parthenogen. It was a partho. So it had an interesting story in that it had literally no father at all. Hence how I even made a normal.
Okay.
So it had an interesting story, and it was almost free, and it was a girl. And then I had to beg somebody to just take this thing.
Okay.
If it was a male, it would have been cobra food probably for somebody. It would have just, and I just don't think that's not.
Do you do shows?
I do.
Do you do expos? You do expos. Okay.
I just do the Northwest ones because I'm too far. The Pacific Northwest.
Right, and you have it. Yeah, your Pacific Northwest show market is fucking atrocious. It's horrible. It's old. It's never happened. It's never occurred. It's like 10 years from now, somebody's like, bro, there's like more reptile shows coming. And you're like, really? They found out that we finally kept reptiles up here in the fucking miserable, cold, depressive, Pacific Northwest. No, I love it up there. I'm not fucking knocking. I'm from the fucking armpit of the country. I'm from the crotch of America, dude. I'm not hearing that. I'm not living that at all. I wish I was living that. But listen, let me say this, okay? So I got all these ball python people saying, I got at least 20 normals in my collection. I got normal hets. I love that. He got the face of like, right? Like, I hate to admit this. Blackheart up in Canada saying wholesalers are buying normals for $40 a piece. So all you northerners selling cobra food at $5, walk that shit across the border, break the law, because it's not really smuggling if you bring it into Canada, and sell that shit for $40 in Canada. But wait, I got something there. Okay. But yeah, it was there. Mike says, where are these wholesalers buying normals for $40? Yeah, in Canada, Mike, Canada. We got to be very, very clear about that in Canada, where things are very different. But let's just say this. I produced ball pythons for 21 years, including this one, okay? And various amounts, from the least amount being maybe 4 clutches, 3 clutches a year, the most amount being maybe 300 clutches a year, 200 and something, which is enough for my little op, because it was in a time when there were a lot of value in those animals. So I did hatch a lot of normals, though. I mean, I've hatched thousands of normals compared to most people. I've hatched thousands of single genes compared to most people, because there's years when I hatch 2,000 snakes a year for a year, right? So you see these numbers, sure. I go to the show, Nick, and I set up a tower, and I put normals, and I put pinstripe males and spider males and pastels and shit, right? All the shit that nobody wanted. And I put a price on the normals like $20, right? Something comparable to what they're selling African imports for in May when they look good. And in August, what an African imported from May looks like in August, bro. It looks like a deflated noodle. It's got cryptosporidium. It's got green urates coming out. It's awful, right? And I've got these nice, healthy normals. Now I take that normal and I let a kid to come over. Yeah, I got Kike continually reminding me, thank you, bro, to say hit like and subscribe and hit the bell. You got to learn these things, Nick, if you're going to really be doing this shit. You got to fucking learn this shit, dude. But yeah, dude, I go to the show and I look for the kid. I look for the kid that's going to be the ball breeder later, the one that wants to be the one of us, the one that's watching YouTube when they can watch shows that don't have the fuck bomb in them all the time and stuff. And I show him, I show him my bullshit banner behind my table, and I say, you can't listen to this right now, kid. You can't, unless your parents say you can, if you're like the Eddie Murphy Raw style of upbringing, right? But dude, this kid's eyes light up when I sell him a pinstripe for $25, right? In place of the normal. Because I can always wholesale the normals. I can always sell the normals. And I always homed my normals and always homed my single genes. I never had a problem homing all of these snakes at the reptile shows that I went to, bro. That's always worked for me. And the greatest feeling in the world is 5 years later when the kid you sold a fucking pinstripe to for $20 when they were 75 is when he comes to you and he buys fucking $10,000 worth of snakes. And that actually happened to me. So I'm like the one that's going to bring my normals and my stuff to try to like parlay this into a future. And then if not, sell somebody a really great pet. And if not, supply my local pet stores with great pets. But I never, ever once sold a ball python for a fucking cobra. I never sent Mike Barrera ball pythons for no fucking, what's the Mexican sacrificial religious shit. You know what I'm talking about. Where they where they worship all the dead and all that shit, sacrifice snakes for good stuff or whatever, but it's practiced as a religion heavily in South Florida by the people there who still are very traditional, and he sells a lot of snakes for that. Come on, one of my, Spanish descendant listeners must be knowing what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.
I just think people need to, I guess I would be, if anything, it's an appeal for some semblance of balance in the hobby. You don't have to be, if you've gone so far to where you would even consider just feeding the normals off or just killing them.
Santa Maria, there you go.
You've gone too far. If you've lost all interest in the actual thing, and all you care about is broken genes that don't code properly, basically, at that point. I think we should keep.
Or is it that you care about how many people are on your Facebook page and how many people are at your table and how many people support your YouTube channel? Or like, at what point is it more or less a me, and we sold the dream? All right, look, I just fucking heard that Pete Call did a podcast that wasn't mine. He did one of those Morelia radio whatever podcasts. I don't know.
Recently?
But I was like, yeah, recently. Yeah, recently.
I'll be skipping that one.
Well, dude, honestly, like when I look at Pete, I'm like, I want you on this show first. And I said, you cheated on me, you motherfucker. We're friends for, but Pete sold me the dream by being a rock star amongst nerds, amongst old men, being a success that showed me that not going to college. Santeria. That's more like what it is. Yeah, that's Santa Maria. She's close. She lives in South Florida. She ought to fucking know. Santeria. Yeah, that's it. It's like a ceremonial thing. And really, they buy snakes for that too. Cobra food and that shit. I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. The most extent that I ever went to exploiting a ball python for some shit like that is I'm north of New Orleans by an hour, and I used to supply the voodoo doctor in New Orleans with legitimate ball python eggshells for his gree-gree. And he was fucking lit that the only countries in the world that practice voodoo as a natural religion, I was supplying him with the eggshells of the species that came from that country. This crazy motherfucker would get in his little hatchback Geo. I can't even believe it ran across this bridge we have in New Orleans and drive to me just to collect a bag full of eggs every year. And bring me like gargoyle statues in trade and shit. Just the most eccentric motherfucker, And hey, dude, that's the most exploitation I ever did off a ball python to anything weird was selling eggshells to Voodoo Gree in New Orleans, and I thought it was pretty cool, But that's it, bro. I'm not saying that what you're saying doesn't exist, because obviously the cobras that are feeding everywhere on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube
we all know this happens. It's been happening for a while.
They're not all just eating kinked ball pythons. Like we don't have that many kinked, like bad defunct ball pythons that are supplying that much. All right. So here we go. I think it's just more rewarding to have someone come back to you after 20 or 30 years to tell you I still have a python from you all those years ago. But dude, it's so rare that happens to me. That's so rare that that's happened to me. And it has happened to me here more recently that I've kind of come back, or that I opened the aquarium store, William. When I opened the aquarium store, I just happened to run into locals that had bought snakes from my Exotics by Nature company from 2000 to 2010 that happened to show up in the store and been like, bro, I bought this snake from you and I still fucking have it. And I'm like, wow, really? You still have a male pastel from 2003 when you paid me $1,500 for it? You thought it was cool? Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. But so fucking rare. I mean, so fucking rare. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not. I don't think it's as prevalent as you may think it is. I think you have a lot of ambassadors to ball pythons out there. I really do. And I do think they're driving it forward. However, I do see people doing what you say. So, it needs to be said. So
it's more the percentage of people feeding off unwanted normals that's not a significant percentage of the ball pythons that get produced.
Right. So we've heard him talk
a very
shit.
Small sliver of things. It's more,
to
me, it's just the idea that you have such disdain for what the snake is supposed to, its natural appearance, that you would even consider that it's literally deemed worthless because it doesn't have any broken genes.
Well, at some point, a child's going to go into a pet store and say, Mom, what is that? And she's going to say, it's a ball python. And he's going to say, but I've never seen one that looked like that. And she's going to say, it says normal.
It's supposed to look like.
It says normal. It says normal. I don't know what that looks like, Mom. I've never seen that before.
It is. I mean,
if you want some fun, I'm going to do some little snippets for YouTube Shorts. And when I do this particular one, I'm going to send you the message. But it regards Greg Graziani. Let's give Greg a shout out real quick after his unfortunate alligator demise, to have lost his left hand to the alligator attack. I'm sure you heard about that, right, Nick?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure everybody heard about that. I have spoken to Greg in text message a little bit, and he called me, and I missed a call yesterday, day before yesterday. But he seems to be out of the hospital and, on the mend. So Greg and I did an episode with Dave Kaufman on my old podcast. And in that episode, we're flipping through a photo book of Greg's, of all of these snakes he's had in the past and all these great ball pythons. And he goes by this one that he gave a name to that didn't prove out. And I told him the reason she looks this way is because she's deformed. He said, she's not deformed. And I said, don't you see her downturned head? Her jaw is a little shorter than the rest. Can't you? And the profile picture in the side of the book was from the side. And he said, I still have her. She's here. And I'm like, well, please go get her by all means. And you can actually hear, we set the snakes' heads on top of each other, a regular ball python and this one. And Dave Kaufman, yeah, he's right. It does have a fucked up head, and it's just like when you see something that's color and pattern was mutated just slightly by some sort of a malformity, it does give you some degree of shaky feelings. And I get it. But then again, I've been here through the fabric of ball pythons from the beginning. I honestly, Nick Mutton, respectfully can tell you, I never thought I would make a dime off of that species. I never thought I'd work with it. So I'm not upset that I did, but I respect what you got to say. All right. So now we're going to move on to what Nick Mutton accepts in the world. And we're going to go over to his Facebook page and we're going to search through his morphs of things that he thinks is perfectly fine, because apparently he went to Australia and he was there the minute each one of these morphs hatched, and he knows for a fact that no snake from any other area was ever let go in that area, and no other person ever let some weird other thing let go. And he's going to take us through some morphs. So I've sidebarred you, sir, to our own collections to go through this. So we got a hype. So this hypo yearling, you love this project. Tell me about this animal right here.
It's a hypomelanistic tiger coastal carpet.
Okay.
There's the term hypomelanism people get confused about because there's two completely different types of hypomelanism that equally qualify. As the term hypomelanism just means less black, but you can arrive at less black in 2 different ways. We've started to call the recessive type T-positive albino, but that's only because it sounds sexier. Because wouldn't you rather have a T-positive albino? Sounds way sexier than a hypo.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe if it's really got that real spin on it, if it's really got that tyrosine spin on it.
If someone were to find a hypo Honduran milk snake, the ones we have now, if they found that now, they would call it a T-positive albino Honduran milk snake. That type is a pigment synthesis mutation. The surface area where the black is supposed to go remains unchanged, but the animal cannot properly synthesize full-strength melanin, so it comes out diluted and looks kind of purple or gray.
Now, how many processes? Hang on a minute, though. Aren't there multiple processes that go through for melanin? It wouldn't tyro positive, if you haven't chemically tested it, just be a hypothesis at this point.
It's all and it's all hypothesis.
Well, didn't they test out? Nothing's ever been tested for tyrosine.
Fish.
I thought the caramel albino ball python. I thought the caramel albino ball python was tested for some reason. I don't know why.
There'd be some surprises probably, but the pigment synthesis mutation, where it's
caramel albino, for those folks that don't know what the fuck that is what Ultramel replaced.
They're always that type is always recessive.
Okay.
And the other type of hypomelanism is a pigment distribution mutation. The animal can process and produce full-strength jet black pigment, but a mutation blocks the distribution of that pigment, so not as much of it goes out. So the black they have is black, but it appears it's quantity, not quality, that's reduced. And the hypocoastals are that type, as are hypoboa constrictors. It's where it's like the black they can make is still black, but there's just,
but it's not, you're actually calling it a reduction in black. That's kind of like a dark gray. It's not purple by insinuation at the tyrosine.
No, this type of hypomelanism, the black is black. It's pretty black pigment, but it's just, there's like 90% less of it than there should be.
Right. Now that tiger, is that back to Jason Balin's tiger?
Yes, but they go back far earlier than that.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know where the tiger gene originally started. It entered my collection with Balin's animal when he bred with Will Leary when they made the Jaguar, the Tiger Jags. I got one of the animals from that first breeding.
This animal on the screen now is 75% genetically from Jason's stuff, which he got from Neville James, who got from a guy named Richard Quick in the 1980s.
I like how you trace that back.
The through line
nice.
There. I exported to Paul Harris, my friend Paul Harris in England. I sent him 3 female tigers from Jason like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's where all the tiger blood in Europe came from, was from those Jason's animals I sent over to him many years ago.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for putting a podcast up here that you were going to do today. Thanks for sharing that. Look at this nice pile of shit here. Nice full blood hypo stonewall. Look at these names you're throwing out, bro. What the fuck? You don't get to shit on ball pythons and use these names. You definitely don't get to shit on corn snakes and use these names. Fuck.
You have to call them some things. I refuse
to call them some things. Listen to this marketing motherfucker here back out of the hole.
What am I gonna? It would be too tedious to explain what a stonewashed is if you don't have a shorthand, because they're actually a form of piebald.
Oh no, I think it's phenomenal, and I want some. I mean, they look fucking insane, man.
Stonewashed is basically it's a form of piebald. So it's a piebald bretels, but it's a weakly expressed piebald gene where the white areas are confined only to the ventral.
What's the value on this? What do you get for these? What's the value on this?
I don't know. It depends. I don't know what I'm in charge this year for this year. Probably $1,500-$1,800
a piece or a pair?
A piece.
All right.
This is it's taken a long time to get to this point. These
things are sexy as fuck, bro. I love this morph.
If you saw them in person, they're actually bright pink. The pictures, like a crappy cell phone picture in my incubator room, has very.
Dude, no, I know what they would look like in real life. That's why I'm like oogling over it, because I'm colored.
The normal appearing animals in that clutch, those are full blood hypos.
Oh wow. Okay, so hypos. Those are insane.
And these are just like an order of magnitude.
Text these out and tell me if you have a pair of these things.
Well, I did. I've got a bunch of. I've got more feet. I think I've got. What do I have? Like 5.7 of them or something in that clutch.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So you got good ratio.
If you go through the comments of that thread, there is a picture of an adult. Someone asked me. I think Marshall asked me right there on the bottom. Marshall asked me, "What's an adult look like?" It's up a little bit. I'm looking at the screen. There.
Wow. Yeah, Marshall Mendez asked that.
That's
wow.
that's one of my adult breeder males.
Sexy as fuck.
Yeah. And it would gain nothing by being hybridized with something else. It's a pure Brettles python.
Oh, yeah. And
mix it with anything.
And the wonderful thing about Brettles is that, and you found this, I'm sure, to be true, that they're very tame.
The best. They're basically
they're naturally fucking tame.
Yeah.
So if any of you ball python people listening to this show, if any of you non-ball python people listening to this show, this is the species that you want to work with.
They're also the hardiest python in the world, just full stop. Like they can handle temperatures down into the mid 40s.
Oh yeah. Because they're from Central Australia.
They need no humidity. They can handle a 50-degree temperature drop at night. It's crazy. You cannot kill them unless you hit them with a shovel or something. You can't kill one.
I love them.
And they're docile.
Yeah.
So they're very very easy.
All right. That's stellar. I would love to have a pair of those, or if there's what? Is it recessive, I assume? The piebaldism, the stonewashed?
It's like all piebald. No piebald genes are ever really totally recessive, are they?
That's true.
You have a python background, and you're going to tell me that.
Yeah, I can pick a het pied. Yeah, I can pick a het pied. Yeah,
you can tell me that a specter is incomplete dominant, but a pied is recessive, because I can pull out a het pied almost every time. I've yet to figure out what a specter is.
No, I've always said, in that case, we could call leopard boas also. Predominant. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, even Hans Winter admitted it to me in person, and I'm like, why are you calling them possible hets when I could just buy these cheap ones? And so that's what I did. He's just like, because that's not what the industry, whatever. And I was just like, fuck you, dude. I'll take all the posset females that look like this then. And I mean, we were producing leopard boas left and right. We didn't need his ass after a while. He's just fucking stupid. He didn't want to listen to reason. But then whatever. That was just a dumb thing. Diamond pythons, bro. Maybe you can help me. I don't know how long you feel a female diamond python's reproductively viable. I have some females here that were born in like 2007, 6. They've been maybe produced with twice. My male they're stellar. Okay. My male going into brumation in a friend of mine's house some kind of way. I'm not making an accusation of my friend. Could have been me, could have been him, could have been the snake. Suffered a spinal damage where he's got some fusion in his neck and he won't climb or breed anymore because of the fusion in the spine. I need to find somebody, maybe you can help me, that I can ship. I trust you and your friends and whoever you put me with, that I can ship 2 full-size female diamond pythons to, that could potentially have a male that could do something with them, because I hate to see them not be productive.
You'd be surprised. They've probably, I know of diamond python females that have laid productive, good clutches into their late 20s, 25, 26 years old, and still.
Okay, I don't feel so bad, because I feel like I've squandered a fucking gold chest, not my gold, but a nature's gold here. Like, I feel evil for actually having not produced a diamond in the last 6 years because of this, but I've not located someone that A, I trust, and B, I could verify enough to have something that I would think would be real, so maybe we'll talk.
Breeding loan. It never ceases to amaze me that how many people will screw you over on a breeding loan.
Well, yeah, I know. But that's why I say trust in this sense. Like, I would trust you or Justin Julander or somebody like that would be really honest with me. And even if they died, I wouldn't really think otherwise, because I have just I have faith in your overall demeanor and your character, and that you have enough integrity that you wouldn't do that. But my friend Joe Dow had a large, I say large, he had 5 boa constrictors of mine, 1 or 2 brand new mutations that had not been made again. And he got a hold of a foot infection, bro. And Joe Dow died. Unfortunately, he died of this foot infection. This was maybe fucking almost 10 years ago now. And all the boas went to someone else, right, who was breeding them and selling babies, unbeknownst to him that I owned them. And I'm reaching out hey, bro, where's my snakes? And that became a thing, right? But I was never angry about it. I was just angry that the dude wouldn't acknowledge them on my snakes. That was all. But in the end of it, I fully expect shit like that to happen, you know. But you know, I'm much more sad over my loss of my friend Joe than I am over the loss of those fucking snakes. Okay, but at the same time, it was a little stressful, you know. So I get what you're saying, but here I'm squandering something. This isn't some fucking BCI morph that 30 other people have. This is a diamond python, bro. And this is from back in the day when diamond pythons came from zoos and diamond pythons were coming in probably not so kosher, you know?
Get back to, yeah, I mean, it's a shame if they don't contribute to the gene pool going forward. But you don't have, it's not as dire as you think. You've probably got a good 10, 12 years of reproductive life left in them.
Oh, shit. Yeah. So I may be able to buy a male from you and grow a male. So, you know, here I am spending all this money surfing your fucking page. All right, here's the more complete carpet python that's coming out soon. I assume this is the new one. Taking links for pre-orders. I'm very excited about that. Here's another photo of that same great ass book. And Axanthic caramel coastal. So again, you know, more mutations on this guy's Facebook page that he finds acceptable. All right. You know, according to him, it's all fine and good because
past isn't a morph.
What's that?
There you go. That's not an Axanthic.
There you go. That's not an Axanthic. There we go.
That is 26 years of selective breeding through 9 generations. I started in 1994.
Wow.
And just to breed the yellow out of a jungle carpet and make it white instead of yellow. And that's after a quarter of a century, you get there. Man. To me, that's far more rewarding than a morph is just like, it's just too easy. This is like took half of my adult life to.
Sure. It's an accomplishment, a selectively bred line. Absolutely. And then one guy throws a high yellow in here though, and undoes all the fabric.
It does undo most of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's what I'm saying. He takes out the eraser and goes, I left my mark on it.
White one to a yellow one to really test it. I can only imagine that the yellow will come back with a vengeance. But
man, look at this. T positive and het children's.
Yes.
Children eye.
Yeah, clutch mates.
Fuck. Fucking outstanding. So I have some really, really, really nice Perthensis.
Have you bred them yet?
Oh yeah. I've produced them annually for 4 years straight. 3 years straight.
Aren't those babies a joy?
Actually, believe it or not, we do extremely well with them.
Really?
Again, my employee with the weird snakes and stuff, she does all kinds of strange, wild stuff, and she's very patient with them. She gets them going good. I'll send you some photos of the stuff that I make, and undeniably patterned and colored to be very real, like no brown, no big, like the big blotches in these that you're seeing, none of the big blotches in these that you're seeing in these. You know that they're the real deal. You know what I mean? Like
they're great.
They're so red and they're so speckled, and the babies are so red and weird, different than all the other Antaresia out of the hatch.
They have a few bad habits, though, aside from wanting to eat lizards, and that they're pretty murderous. Yeah. I've had most of the adults that I've owned were killed by their own mate. This year I put the man with the female, and she literally ate him, just ate him, and then of course spit him back up a few days later.
Oh God, that's so tragic.
That's the third one I've had do that. That's the first one that was killed. But I had another female do the same thing, and I had 2 males I put together to combat, and one male killed the other one. It's like they're very murdery.
Yeah, like Varanastori.
I love Perthensis though. They're probably the neatest Antaresia.
I think they're my favorites, dude. I think they're my favorite Australian python, although blackheads are really close.
Look like a little death adder or something. They got that really wide head. They're really cool.
I love hatching them. This year, I'll be honest, we are a lot slower off on there. And look, Morelia House says there's no super chat button. I'm sorry, YouTube won't give me one until we have 1,000 subscribers, but just wait. It's coming. I will make money off of this eventually, maybe, but not really because dude, I bought I got a Sony, the brand new Sony A7 IV camera to do some good shots with, because I want to do some macro shots. That's really what I want. I didn't buy the camera for this fucking podcast, but I certainly spent a ton of money doing this. So yeah, dude, I love the Antaresia. I love the anthills are by far my jam. I love it. And this sexy ass shine eye is not too bad either, though. You know,
That's a
you
good
said
looking
this one
snake.
was produced by Scott Borden. That is a wicked nice yellow line right there.
And it's actually way better looking in the picture.
Oh, for sure.
In person, it almost is orange. It has almost an orange tinge to it. It's crazy.
Oh, that was somebody that got one from you years ago. Good color. Let's see what else we got. Carinata. There's one that eluded me. I should have bought this. I should have bought this when Cameron was selling his full-grown breeder adults. We were talking, and I didn't buy them, and I should have bought them in hindsight. How do you like this species?
I bought them.
Oh yeah, you bought. Fuck you then.
I bought
Thanks a lot.
I think the ones I bought were some, like, I bought a pair of subadults that he had held back and decided.
Oh, okay.
Not to.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. Like and subscribe. Since you can't super chat, Morelia House said he wants those diamonds. Is this guy trustworthy? He said he just shipped you some stuff.
That's my man, Brandon Wheeler. He's a good
Oh,
friend.
That's Brandon Wheeler?
Yeah, he just
Oh, okay. I know Brandon Wheeler from
Brandon's
years
a great
back.
guy. I've known
Yeah, I
Brandon
know
for
Brandon Wheeler from years
20
back.
years.
Various things. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've been around a block with Brandon Wheeler. Brandon, hit me up, dude. If we can do something together, I would love to send him to you because I'd much rather stop fucking feeding them for him to do whatever. All right, we gotta close chats from people that are annoying because I can't get through a Facebook page that have stupid people popping chats up. All right, let's see. Stop fucking posting chats. How do I shut that off? All right. I'm going to continually close it every time it pops up. A male, possible zebra, possible ivory, possible whatever.
Possible.
Stop fucking up my shit. I'm trying to read shit while I'm closing people's stuff. Yeah, talk to me about this snake.
Zebra mutation.
75% zebra. Tell me about zebra, okay? Because I've got a zebra sitting over there right next to the... So I'm watching the diamonds crawl. I'm watching a really nice high yellow, but not nearly as nice as the one I just looked at on your page. Pure jungle crawl around. And then below it is a zebra. So tell me about zebra. And zebra is co-dominant and the super form is lethal. Is it not? A broken, defunct gene?
I mean, nothing's really ever co-dominant. It's incomplete.
Well, whatever. Incomplete dominant. I'm sorry, bro. I go way back. I got a way back vocabulary, bro.
Okay, so it's incomplete dominant. The super form is not lethal, but they can be problematic. They have an incredibly high rate of tail tip kinking. Most of them will hatch with some sort of a relatively minor deformity at the tip of the tail. And even if they don't have a deformity at the very tip of the tail is not as long as it should be. It's like the tail is like 15 or 20% shorter proportional to the body length. It tapers, goes to a tip. It looks fine, but if you compared it next to a normal, it's a little bit shorter.
Wow, so it's a defunct version of a wild snake, is what you're saying?
It's basically like the inverse of a super cinnamon ball python, where it makes the homozygote is a patternless snake, but instead of having a fucked up snout, it's got a fucked up tail.
Okay.
One mutation does all that. It blows all the paint off, makes a patternless snake, and physically alters the skeletal structure most of the time. They also have a higher rate of spinal kinking, though not astronomically higher. I have kept them back. I have raised them up. I have bred them. I've also had a few supers that just drop dead as subadults for seemingly no reason. So they're not lethal, but they are.
It's basically, I know, it's a super Motley Boa-ish. Doesn't have any degradation over time. Does it degrade like that?
No,
You've seen them, right? You've seen the way they muscularly degrade.
Yeah, they don't seem to go downhill like that.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Motley, but
that's crazy.
I don't go out of my way to make them. I have not made.
Yeah,
I have not made any in a few years.
There's that knockout again. Yeah, fuck you with that snake. All right, this is beautiful. Axanthic granite,
pure Papuan. Axanthic granite. That's an adult. All
right, now what species is that?
Then, boy, this is going to be a long one.
I'm curious. See, this is what did somebody say earlier? Bullshit University right here. Look, this is the real deal.
Have been kind of a homeless sort of population as far as taxonomically where to put them.
Yeah, I want to know.
Ray Hoser years ago made frankly a crappy back of the napkin species description that's like 3 sentences long, and named them Harrisoni just because he wanted to name something. His description is not valid for a whole host of reasons. Most notably, they're not genetically distinct. The Papuan carpet population is genetically essentially identical to the Cape York Australian population, and they are only minimally divergent, less than 2% from the Northern Territory carpet. So your Darwin carpets, the carpets on the Cape York Peninsula from around, around Coranda to the tip of the Cape and New Guinea are all the same thing. They're all variegata. But there are three. So you have one species that has three distinct regional populations. You can't even tell the Cape York and the New Guinea ones apart with a DNA test. You can tell that the Darwins are divergent, but they're not divergent enough to really warrant a separate species designation.
Right. But the albino morph came from the Darwinian line.
Yes, you could conceivably, technically, you could make a snow granite that would be pure variegata.
Right. Okay.
I would never do that.
But not necessarily pure Australian variegata.
No, it would be pure variegata, but it'd be, to me, it would be
multi-continental, right? It would be a mutt from that perspective.
But that is, yes, it's like, but then it's how finely do you split hairs, I guess.
Dude, again, when I used to say that I'd have a podcast called Mutton with Mutton, I was serious. I was not fucking kidding here. I've delivered.
When you get into the sort of biogeography of Papua New Guinea and Australia and all that, it gets pretty, you can get down in the weeds and talk for a long time.
I love it, though. I'm into it. Fuck anybody, including
just a quick
somebody that would say this is uninteresting. I find it interesting, so fuck you guys that don't.
In excruciating detail in the new book, but the why Darwins are different from the Cape York and New Guinea populations a little bit has to do with sea level. Last glacial maximum was about 20,000 years ago, and at that point, sea level was like 450 feet below what it is now, which exposed a massive amount of continental shelf. Basically, everything it would south of New Guinea and Australia, and north of all that was dry land. The Aru Islands were landlocked as part of this exposed continental shelf.
Okay.
So and the habitat would have been dominated.
Was Biak still considered a separation at that point?
Always. Biak is what we call an oceanic island.
I love that.
I
love that shit.
To the mainland.
I always loved my mean motherfuckers from there.
In Australia and New Guinea are not two different places. They are one place that has water flowing over the top of a bit of it periodically.
Hit the like and subscribe button, motherfuckers.
For the last 2 million years, the majority of that time, Australia and New Guinea have been combined into one landmass called Soooo.
Okay.
It's only we just happen to be around in an interglacial period when sea level's higher, and New Guinea, they're separated. They're not normally, most of the time, they're not separated. When that sea level rises and the glaciers recede in an interglacial, like the Holocene interglacial we're in currently, that marine inundation of that exposed shelf starts in the west and moves eastwards. So what you find is like the Aru is right at the edge of that. So Aru almost immediately becomes an island again once the sea level starts coming up a little bit. But it doesn't take that long. Basically, once the sea level, because it takes thousands of years for the sea level to rise.
Okay.
But very quickly, the sea level rises to the point where it inundates what's called the Carpentaria Basin. The Gulf of Carpentaria is a lake. It's a low-lying basin that has a brackish lake in it during high sea level or low sea level. Once the ocean water rises to a point, it inundates Lake Carpentaria, and at that point, it severs all connection with New Guinea and the top end. Your Darwins and your New Guinea carpets become reproductively isolated. There's a bunch of ocean in between them, and
is that where the carpet python name came from?
Because somebody in the 19th century just thought they looked like a Persian rug.
Okay. Is that what it was? Damn, I was hoping that there was some correlation there.
I don't really get that, but that was what they were thinking at the time.
I was hoping there was some correlation there anyway.
But connectivity and presumably a habitat corridor persists in the east along the Cape York Peninsula up until about 6,000 years ago. So the reason why they're so genetically the same is because they haven't been separated long enough to go off on their own separate trajectories. And the Darwins have been separated for some thousands of years longer, not a tremendously long time, but they were isolated earlier, so they key out genetically a little bit more different.
Okay.
But not that different.
All right. Now, are you a scrub python guy while we're digging into
Yes, but that's a touchy one because I've been involved in a massive phylogenetics paper on scrub pythons we've been working on for almost 4 years.
Because that's got to be another fucking retic.
Yes, there's a lot of them, and
there's a lot of them.
But I can't really. When you haven't published your paper yet, you got to kind of be
Oh
careful.
no,
what
no,
you
no!
say.
I'm not. Yeah, no, don't even walk the line. That's fine. We can always talk
Suffice
about
it
that
to
boring
say,
shit
yeah,
later for people that want to really get into it.
A
But
lot
I
of what
mean,
people think about scrub python speciation and taxonomy is wrong.
now what about white lips? Let's get there since they are a kind of a. Let's talk about Let's talk about what once was my favorite genus of python, Liasis. Let's talk about Liasis. Let's talk about all those fun things that happened to Liasis, because it used to be Australian pythons that mattered and every other shit python in Indonesia nobody gave a fuck about, and everything was Liasis and blah 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 blah. If it wasn't a Walmart or blackhead or a carpet python, it's fucking Liasis. So
Honestly,
at that point,
some of the more interesting pythons are the Indonesian Liasis, because you have a biogeographic barrier called the Wallace Line that basically separates the fauna of Australia and New Guinea from Indonesia, and nothing crosses the Wallace Line. Really.
Isn't that crazy, guys? That those islands are so similarly in proximity, as he's talking about a fucking shelf connecting them and stuff, and that the fact that they don't cross that line is.
But you've
bonkers.
got strong ocean currents that if you tried to cross it, it would just flush you out in the bottom into the south, the Southern Ocean. And you wouldn't make landfall. So that's why there's no retics in New Guinea and there's no scrub pythons further over in Indonesia. That barrier keeps them separated. Very rare for something to cross that. Liasis crossed that back. Liasis invaded the progenitor of all Australian pythons, colonized Australia about 25 million years ago, probably just a single species, and then underwent what's called an adaptive radiation. They diversified, and to all the different genera and everything that we know now, all rapidly diverged about 25 million years ago from a common ancestor. And Liasis is one of those clades that had that early origin around that time. But Liasis crossed back over the Wallace Line back into Indonesia onto the other side, along with dwarf monitors. The dwarf monitors, you have dwarf monitors in Indo, and they crossed back out again as well. And it's the same islands, Timor, and these places in the Lesser Sundas, those Liasis, so they actually escaped. So they're basically long lost Australian pythons. But again, at last glacial maximum, circa 20,000 odd years ago, the coast of the Kimberley coast, where those rough scale pythons and stuff are found,
right?
That was less than 100 kilometers from Timor, because Timor was larger at lower sea level, and the coast of Australia extended out a considerable distance, and there were islands in between that would allow for overwater dispersal. So when sea level drops enough, those land masses come close enough to allow for what's called vicariant, or i.e. overwater dispersal.
All right. That's fucking awesome, dude. Thank you for taking us through that. That's like I always wondered about and because I don't, did you do a lot with monitors ever? Were you ever like a monitor dork like I was?
I kept a few things here and there, but it was never serious.
Yeah, I had to talk myself out of a glaucodite of a Kimberly Rock monitor just at the last like 2 reptile shows ago, because they had a little baby one there and I hadn't seen one in so long. And it was so seductive to look at, because I've always been in just an Odatria junkie, to the point of I had stores feasting on each other. You talk about fucking anthill pythons. A lot of people that ball python people are familiar with store eye. I mean, you know what they're like, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
my only interaction with them is I found several of them in the wild. A friend of mine down there has a spot, and sure enough, they were just in this pile of rocks. Every rock you turn over, there was a couple of them under. They're just all over the place.
But were they always together?
You'd find a couple of them under a rock together sometimes, usually just one, but there was just a lot of them.
Right. I guess there's enough of them to eat, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't hungry, but
no. I mean, for them to eat each other is what I meant. I mean, because the species in captivity is so cannibalistic.
Well, I mean,
hatch them.
A lot of that kind of stuff is kind of eat first, ask questions later. If it can fit in your mouth, it's food, and monitors' metabolic rates are so high that they're constantly inhaling calories because they're burning them. They're like a bird almost, where they have this high metabolic rate and they just need constant influx of energy. Life cycle goes fast.
You remember Frank, heat them and feed them, right? Remember Frank keeping them hot and lit.
That's
He used heat lights 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They never got a nighttime, and he just poured food in the cages,
but
and that was it.
you know, you wouldn't have the success in monitor breeding if it wasn't for Frank. Like
Oh no, Frank's
he pioneered.
legendary, man.
Nobody's
You know,
right about everything, but that
When
guy.
did you meet
really-
him? When did you meet Frank for the first
I have
time?
never
Bring
met
me back.
Frank.
You never
I've
met
never
Frank?
met Frank. No.
Oh man,
Never.
you
I was
missed
never
an
really into
opportunity.
monitors, but I mean, I follow
Thanks.
that kind of stuff, and so I definitely respect his achievements and that he really was the first one to get that going.
If you ever come to New Orleans and you go to the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans, all of the original artificial rock work in there was done by him in like 79 to 81. And then whenever I wanted to get special dirt from him to hatch to get my Ackies to breed, he told me he wouldn't sell me any dirt unless I sent him hurricane drink mix from fucking like Tipitina's or one of these bars in New Orleans. It's famous for it. And I was like, dude, are you serious, man? And that was it, man. He would every time I saw him, he would say that. But I met him and Dave Barker on the same day. I was 16 years old. It was 1996. I was in Houston at an ETHS show, and they were in the corner playing didgeridoos together. And that was the two of them. And I was like enamored with the both of them. And I remember being a fly on the wall as Frank was telling his story about why he heated monitors 24 hours a day. And he said that when he was on his walkabout one time in Australia, he was camping out in the middle of the desert, and he built a fire. And in the middle of the night, while he was gathered around his fire to stay warm, monitor lizards came out and basked in the heat and the light of the fire with him. Now, you have to understand he's also the one that says that when he figured out the dirt in Arizona, right? It was Arizona, right? Not New Mexico. I think it was Arizona. Arizona, where he moved, he found like a canyon riverbed area where the dirt matched Australian dirt exactly. And that when he reached down and picked up a scoop of this dirt and dug a little bit in it, he says that he had reptile eggs in his hand, and that he knew that the dirt was approved by God, and it was the dirt he needed to hatch his lizards, and that little creek bed was now a giant fucking canyon because he dug it all out and brought it up to his place.
But I mean, if you think about it, it only makes sense. An animal, reproduction for a female of anything is incredibly costly. They sometimes die in the act of reproduction. They're not going to reproduce unless they are on some instinctive level convinced that those eggs are going to hatch. It's not worth the risk. And so if the soil conditions are not right, the eggs will desiccate. There's no point. It was the female loses all that body condition and no offspring results. So being incredibly particular about where you lay your eggs makes a massive difference in your success. So it's only
I think there was merit to his dirt. Don't get me wrong, but don't tell me I can't go dig sandy, barren dirt that's mostly humic decomposure here and have a similar result. That was it. But I mean, dude, I learned some very fundamental things from Frank. The only other, I'll be honest, really solid fundamental thing I ever learned was we were at a show and I walked by and he recognized me from a few shows because I'd always talk to him and I was young, right? I looked real young. He did me a solid. He actually, the very first time we saw each other in Daytona, I was my very first Daytona show in 2000 when Wayne moved to Daytona. I showed up to buy stuff from my reptile store and I had $700 left in my pocket at the end of the show. And I think red Ackies were like $1,500 a pair. And I really wanted a pair of them, like more than anything. And I kept coming back to the table and coming back. And I had just opened a reptile store when I was 20. So all my money that I had went into the store inventory. And I literally only had $700 left. And I didn't really see anything else I wanted to put in the store right then. It was a brand new store. And Frank was like, "Hey, kid, what are you looking at?" And I was like, "Oh, man, I keep looking at red Ackies, Frank. I keep looking at these, you know." And he's just like, "Hey, look." And, you know, he was grimy as fuck. He used to bring a soldering iron to the show, and he would solder your fucking deli cup shut And I'm like, dude, you can see the fumes inside the cup with the lizard and shit. He's fucking like, this lizard's gonna bust out of here and you're gonna lose $700, kid, you know. And he's fucking soldering this. He's soldering a deli cup shut as he's talking to me. And he says, kid, how much money you got in your pocket? You know? And I was like, dude, I got $700. And he fucking handed me that goddamn deli cup with a pair of red Ackies in it for $700. And he was like, I really hope these do something for you, you know? And man, he made a fucking demon out of me with Australian stuff. He made a demon out of me. And he looked at me and we were talking about some snakes and he talked about tree snakes. And he said, kid, do me a favor. I want you to point in this room to an arboreal cage. And I pointed to somebody had a Vision like 36, 24, 24 cube on their table with some shit in it. And I was like, that's one right there. And he said, kid, it's not an arboreal cage until it's as tall as a tree. And I thought about it and I was like, okay, I can put carpet pythons in a fucking rack. And I just went right back to being the colubrid guy that I was. And I broke a coat hanger and I stuck it in a fucking rack and I put carpet pythons in it. So tell me now, Mr. Morelia, did you like my title, The Conquistador of Carpets, the Master of Morelia? Did you like that?
Yeah,
that's a new one? Nobody's ever called you the Conquistador of Carpets?
Quite hit on that one yet.
Oh man, but I tell you what, I got to tell you, man, this has been a great show with me. I mean, I'm truly interested in all of this. Like, dude, this has been great. Have you enjoyed it?
I can.
You can go for
days,
days, right?
Geek out and talk about snakes, and it's like, anytime you can talk about things you're passionate about with someone who's of similar mind, it's a good time.
Well, the thing is the whole Indo-Pacific region for me as a hobbyist, as a aquarium hobbyist, as a reptile hobbyist, has always been a very amazing and sacred place in the world that I've always been astonished with. I've always been drawn to. Half my books on my shelf, bro, are Australian and Indonesian books.
Yeah,
look at this. I love Savage right now. Best show so far.
The biogeography of that region is so complicated, and that's why you have so many crazy different things in proximity. The Australian, geologically, Australia and all of southern New Guinea is Australia. But northern New Guinea, north of the mountain range, is actually part of the Pacific plate. The Australian plate is drifting north, while the Pacific plate is drifting west. So they're hitting each other at a weird angle. What we call New Guinea is basically like a 4-car pileup. The Bird's Head Peninsula was a separate island, as was the Bird's Tail Peninsula. And the northern coast of New Guinea was several different arcs of islands that all sort of accreted and formed that northern lowland strip. But there were pythons on all these different places when they were separate islands, and they've collided into one mass now, pushing up mountains at the points of contact. And that's why you have animals that are so close together but they're not interbreeding, because they evolved their separate identities in isolation as an island form, and then those islands slammed into each other. And that just happens to be when we're taking a look at it. So you see this insane amount of diversity, like the Bismarck Archipelago. Everything on the Bismarck Archipelago is
Thank you. You would led me right into it, bro. Bathroclus boa. Bring me down that path. Bring me to a Bismarck ring python. Tell me all about that.
Wayward white-lip python. There's no.
There you go. That's what I wanted to hear. Was what its closest relative was a wayward white-lip.
Like they're.
Yep.
In
always
future writings that I'm already working on, they'll all be. It's all Bothrocylus. Leopython is an unnecessary genus because Bothrocylus is the older term, so you have to default.
Okay, so basically white lips are going to be a Bothrocylus then.
I already refer to them as that. That's what they should be.
Good man.
What
are they? Are they liases still? What are they?
No, they're in Leopython.
Oh yeah. See, I go back. Like I said, I go back to Ross and Marzek and that. So
you go back to the early 70s. They were all in Python. Then everything in Australia, New Guinea was Liasis. Then at one point, white lips were in Morelia. Then they were in Bothrocylus. Then they were in Leopython again. And now
it gets fucked up with the green screen, guys. So I'll like bend it, and maybe hopefully cause enough shadow on it. This guy right here.
If I had to point to the two reasons why I breed snakes for a living,
look at that. Me too, bro. This is it.
It's that book and the Barker's 1993 Australian Pythons book. That's why I do what I do.
Right next to it on my shelf, bro.
That is why those
this
two
guy
books
right here.
Yep,
This guy
there
right
it is.
here. There it is,
You
right
have
there.
Two of
This
the
is it.
greatest reptile books ever written.
Bro, do you know how good it feels to be? And look, I'm gonna say this is an accomplishment of my life. How good it feels to have grown up with this book right here, and how I've got the ball python version of this with all the morphs too, and that I've got my photos and my credit in that book. That feels so fucking amazing to be that person, to have read this book and had this been the fucking, yeah, look, this is it right here. William Philippek said it. The Neil deGrasse Tyson of reptiles right here. The astrophysicist of herpetoculture. It's not the conquistador of carpets, but I'll come up with one that leads along to it. Hey, William, thank you a lot for paying such compliments and for being up my ass about getting Nick Mutton on the show for so many years. Because honestly, this is gold to me and I love it. And this book right here, oh, I can't tell you how many times I was in high school study hall reading this book with people picking on me, telling me I was a fucking nerd. You know, the girl in front of me, turns out the girl in front of me actually wanted to fuck me the entire time. And I was just so much of a nerd and into snakes that I never even noticed. Dude, I could have lost my V card at like 15 with this book. Because she was so enthralled with my knowledge, but it didn't work out that way, bro. I was 19 when
I think even more than the information that those books have, they really just captured your imagination and you fostered this fascination with these animals.
God,
and that just grew. So those books are in the books. Frankly, if I'm being honest, like everything that I've written since I've started writing books is a continuation of that. It's like I'm inspired by that book. My writing style is very similar to that because that was such an influence on me.
Yeah, I remember this rough scaled being so Carinata having literally like preserved specimens because they were so fucking rare that they were having to use dead ones in the photographs to really illustrate certain physiological things about the species. Absolutely phenomenal books, guys. Both of these books are fucking well out of print, I'm sure. I'm sure they're very hard to find. I'm sure they're very hard to get. But if you find them anywhere, if you find them on eBay, if you keep finding them, keep buying them and giving them to people, selling them to people, you know. And then, of course, like I said, the ball pythons of the world, the history ball python one, that was just posthumous, I think. But anyway, I mean, it's what it is, right? Here's the big ball book, the big coffee table monster. It is what it is, right? It's got a lot of good information in it, but it was definitely posthumous compared to pythons of the world. Now, I did not read the blood one. I did not read it. I owned it and I didn't read it because I bought it for an insane amount of money at a US ARC auction, Nick. I paid like $1,500 or something for it. Like the very first one that she produced, like that was printed, and I had her write in it like a long inscription, right? And then I wrote one, and the idea was to keep donating it, or whatever along the line was my plan. And I don't think anybody else, whoever bought it, didn't carry on that. They'll do it, but whatever. How are you in there? Do you get over to Malaysia much, or Indonesia is pretty much where you stop with your sexpertise? We'll call it. We'll talk. Well, this man's expertise is sexy as fuck. So we will call it sexpertise tonight. Yes, we will.
I keep getting stuck in Australia. There's just it's like a whole continent, so there's a lot of places to go.
Oh, it's like a whole continent. It's only as big as this
continent, right?
Right.
It is. I've been a number of times and been to a number of different places and found a lot of snakes.
Put that book back before I drop it on the floor.
I mean, honestly, after I get done with this, I need to get on the internet and find airfare because I'm supposed to go back in December and I haven't bought my tickets yet.
You better get on it, and dude, like, talk to me about this podcast. Like, what's holding you back, man?
No, it's just finding the time and finding the guests that I want to have, because I don't want to talk to breeders. I want to talk to scientists who are doing field work and that sort of stuff. And I want to have like a niche sort of podcast for like the 7 people that are really super into stuff like that. It's going to make like 9 people really happy.
Wow.
A really deep dive into the more academic side of things. Like,
yeah, but how rewarding is that still? Okay. How rewarding is that still? Like, I love that we're getting a little bit of traction with this show, but honestly, I could give a fuck.
That's the stuff that, like, when we talked about, like, you know, glacial maximum Pleistocene sea levels and its effect on the biogeography and distribution of species, that sort of stuff.
Hey, look what Will said. Okay, made it back home. 9 out of 10. Any live ball python related podcast I turn off. I got to admit, this one has me intrigued and kept me interested. And dude, hopefully you learned something, Will, and hopefully you were exposed to a new species or two, or a new mutation or two that may have had a little bit of appeal. I can't tell you how much fun Antaresia and Morelia breadlie are to work with as species in a ball python rack system. You can work them in a rack system for most of their life. I mean, Brettles have to go up into a cage, but eventually, but you guys can really step outside the bounds. And Nick, that's the purpose of Off Topic Tuesday, is to bring you to light and to show these motherfuckers that there's a lot more than just ball pythons, and that there's not a lot that you have to be scared of, right? Because some species are really demanding, but that there are a lot of species that aren't so demanding. Hey guys, I'm wearing a Python, Black Python Project Black Python shirt. Bull and I, which is a Morelia, right? I mean,
that's currently in Cymalia. Formerly in Morelia, now in Cymalia.
Right. So there you go. But to have a species that is as difficult as Bull and I, you don't have to worry about those if you're just a regular cat. There's probably a little bit outside your pay grade, but
yeah, a lot of is another hot take for you. But a lot of the problems that people have when this species or that species is difficult, it's because people they don't do the research. They have a set of expectations going in that are wrong, and they just stick to that. With any of the scrub pythons, and Bull and I are absolutely just a montane scrub python. The biggest reason why people fail to breed them is they get them too big and fat, and they don't breed. There's this tendency in the hobby where people tend to conflate two unrelated things, and that is the concepts of maximum size, which, spoiler alert, there's no such thing as maximum size. Snakes are indeterminate growers. They never stop growing. If you keep feeding them, they'll achieve unnatural sizes. They always conflate the biggest one anybody ever found with an adult. So, well, if they hear that a bar-necked scrub python can get 15 feet long, they think bar-necked scrub pythons are supposed to be 15 feet long, and they're not. You don't measure. This would be, to use like an NBA analogy, like remember Yao Ming, the Chinese basketball player, like 7 foot.
Hey, how about Sean Bradley? Anybody remember Sean Bradley? Because he broke his back too, and he was a tall motherfucker. If you watched Space Jam recently, he's the white guy on Space Jam, the original one.
You don't judge like a population. You don't look like, well, Yao Ming was 7'4", so Chinese men must be 7'4". Like, that's crazy.
They all wish they had a 7'4" dick. They all wish they had Yao Ming's dick.
Is way shorter. But they want to do that with snakes. I have seen a multitude of 14, 15-foot scrub pythons in captivity, and what I have never seen is a 14-foot scrub python sitting on a clutch of eggs. Not once. And I was going to ask you
if you'd ever seen an 18-foot scrub python in your life.
Because if you've made it 18 feet long, you've ruined it. It's never going to breed. You're just going to have a really giant, pissed off snake that's hard to house appropriately and very challenging. It's never going to breed. You know what breeds really well? 7-foot scrub pythons. I hatched a clutch of Wamena scrub pythons this year. It's the third year in a row. I've had 3 consecutive years of 10, 12, and 11 this year. 100% eggs, 0 slugs, 100% fertility, 100% hatch rate. And the female is maybe 7 feet long. She's about carpet python size, and they breed like clockwork. It's getting these things to an unnatural size.
That's why I put that. I picked up those anthills at a show from somebody who had grown them to adulthood, and I had to put them on a diet for like about 10 months before I could even consider the female productive. And then the person I got them from tried to breed them and unsuccessfully. And I was like, well, it's an Antaresia. It should breed like a fucking speckled king snake. It's basically the king snake of Australia, in my opinion. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is probably just needs a diet. And it had like almost lumps, but the color, Nick, and the pattern was so perfect that I wasn't going to let him go. Right. I wasn't going to like look at the fat and be like, yeah, she's overweight. I'll pat. I was like, what do you want? She wanted some piebald ball python with some genes in it in trade and $200. And I was like, oh, please, by all means, I'll take these fucking snakes home.
Yep.
And so I took them home. We put them on like a 10-month diet or so. And dude, she's produced this year is this is the third year in a row she's produced. She's tiny. But I try to tell people how much Australian reptiles are reptile eaters.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like,
A lot
tell
of
me
the
this:
smaller ones.
bowline eyes, scrub pythons. Is this the same case throughout all of Indo
You don't
area too,
see-
or is it
like-
only just Australian and PNG that you see most of it?
I would say you don't see much in the way of like snake eating as a habit with the carpet python or scrub python clades, but aspidaites are well known to eat other snakes. Olive
fuck yeah.
pythons. There's one of the founder rough scale pythons from the captive lineage of the Australian Reptile Park. They pulled it out of the coils of an olive python that was trying to eat it. And they saved it. It was getting eaten by an olive python. Olive pythons have been known to eat children's pythons, carpet pythons, freshwater crocodiles, rather. They eat all kinds of stuff. Liasis in general, even the Indo ones they eat.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to eat other reptiles and eat other snakes. So the Antaresia are all. There was a picture. I tried to get it for the new book, but I couldn't get permission from it was a hard time tracking down the actual person that took the picture. And it's a spotted python eating a carpet python. It was a juvenile carpet python, an adult spotted python.
I'm sure they like what lizards other than geckos, obviously. What lizard's the main predation of that right there? Like what is that? That eats mostly what? I mean, they eat a lot of venomous stuff.
I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any records of any python preying on any venomous species, but it doesn't mean it's not happened. That just because
not when blackheads range. Who's in blackheads range? Don't they have
a lot of stuff?
There's taipans and shit in blackheads range. You don't think a blackhead eat a fucking taipan?
I don't know if it would go well for the blackhead, but I wouldn't be surprised they tried.
Shit, you've seen a blackhead eat a snake before. I mean, listen, guys, don't ever, whatever you do, try to feed a black-headed python a ball python. Don't ever do that. That's fucking heinous. That's fucking destructive and horrible. But don't even try, because aspidaites don't even put them around other snakes like that, because they will jump all over it like fucking nothing. It's a fucking mouse. It's crazy.
Like anybody that produces, hundreds or more snakes in a year, you do end up with a percentage of stillborns. They just die full term in the shell. I save all that, and that's what I start my black-headed python babies on, usually on carpet pythons. But I'm not
Casey used to start them on bearded dragons and shit.
Yeah, I just have enough. I mean, over the course of a year, I'll have 6 or 8 carpet pythons that just died in the shell for whatever reason. I just freeze them off and use them for feeders, but they were the one, I think that's better than throwing them away. I mean, at least then.
Oh, sure. I don't have a problem with feeding. I don't have a problem of feeding in. Yeah, as long as we're talking about, feeding in stuff that we know why it's dead. We know it's not dead because of a bacterial infection or something.
Usually
right? But I mean, otherwise, no.
It's usually the egg tooth falls off and detaches before they get through the shell, so they just drown and asphyxiate. Right. You can't slice the shell because the egg tooth just is very fragile and it falls off.
Trust me, I've been cutting eggs for 26 years because I don't.
Well, that's another opportunity for another hot take on the egg cutting thing. But
it's fine. No, it's perfectly fine. You can run down that road. I'll tell you real quick how I do a ball python clutch. I leave a clutch together because I have a room that I can incubate in. I don't need to flatten them out into little tubs and put them in an incubator that they don't fit in. I have an 8 by 12 by 8 foot room that's an incubator that I can just put python eggs in. So I'm spoiled like a fuck when it comes to that. Okay. But when it comes to a clutch, I'll leave a ball python clutch completely stuck together. And when it's nearly ready to hatch and they fall apart naturally, that's when I cut them. I don't really feel I have a problem with that. Now, when I cut an egg is able to almost reseal itself. I don't go cut the whole top of the fucking egg off and make a goddamn half a display. Like, I don't know who started that other than Nerd. Like, I've seen Kevin, literally take an egg, cut the whole front off of it, put it in a tub, and bring it to a reptile show. Right. Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, it's like I've also seen myself do the same fucking thing when a clown that a guy wanted to buy stayed in an egg for 7 days and didn't want to come out. So I'm like, I know you're done. I'm taking you out.
I cut all my eggs, but there's a difference between making an incision. You're basically making an escape hatch. So if anything goes wrong with the egg tooth, the animal can get out of the egg. It 100% is going to increase your hatch rates. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's the sawing the entire, taking a straight razor and slicing the entire top of the egg off, and then getting a spoon and scooping it out so you can see what morph you hatched a few days early. This is like a certain somebody who breeds a lot of retics in California. Yeah, exactly.
Been a lot of talk about him, you know, and I mean, it's just like,
it's good for a
how
reason.
did you not see that though? How did you not see that coming? How is it? Where does the line get drawn in showmanship to where me and you have a green? Yeah, you got a terrarium right there. So like, I don't even have any animals being exploited in the background of my fucking podcast right now.
Well,
you know, other than yours.
Spiny-tailed iguana.
Well, there you go, right? You got a fucking Tenosaurus or whatever stuck in there.
Yeah,
you know, somebody out there would be like, but it ain't gonna be me.
Yeah.
Where is the line drawn? Where do we draw the where? Like, it's like me talking to you about morphology versus naturalism. I love the fact that I went to your page and we ran into like 2 natural snakes amongst 7 or 8 pictures. Because here you are
on my
no, I know there's a lot more than that on your page, and I'm not trying to take the credit away from you for that. You have a lot of naturalistic stuff, and I appreciate that. But you are also hitting on the mutations of shit that people are like, I didn't know there was any mutations like that, you know, because there's not a MorphMarket, you know, list of shit to go through. There's not a pile of codom recessive stuff to understand. There is no seeming God in the marketplace, right? You're the God. You're the God. You and Zoolander are the fucking gods, right? You and Zoolander are the Kevin Nerd, the Justin Kabilkas, the Brian Bart, right? You're that guy of carpet pythons. And honestly, dude, Morelia needed you badly. Because I've been bitching about the mudding in Morelia and in Australian species for years. And I love to have you. I love that I had you on, bro. Thank you so much for doing this podcast.
Anytime.
We're at 2 fucking hours. I interrupted you some, but not nearly as much as I have in the past. To be totally honest with you. I truly enjoyed this because, and as William said, I've been leaving his comment on the screen forever, ever, because it's true that you've encouraged him to travel the world and maybe experience some of these microclimates and stuff himself to his own favorite species. So at that, what do you have that other than that spiny tail iguana? What's near and dear to your heart that's not trapped in the Indo-Pacific?
I have
anything? You got a South American kick, a dart frog fruitism, a day gecko thing, a Madagascar thing?
A bit of a love affair with the non-flashy members of the Corallus genus.
Okay, so annulated boas and other things like annulated boas.
Corallus Russian burgeri from South America and from Central America, that sort of stuff.
Look at this. Savage, one of the sponsors, says you need to have him back on. I totally agree with you. I think we need to wait until the carpet python book comes out, and I'm going to go through it and see how many fucking misspellings Russ Gurley missed. And we'll highlight them all, and we'll go through them on the show like I was going to do on the ball python book.
There's always something, no matter how many times. Like when that book comes out, it's like everybody should know that Justin and I have read every word in that book probably 5,000 times.
Oh, I'm sure that book is the most edited.
There will still be a typo.
And Russ is a fucking legend. Russ, there would not be half the books out right now from Eco without Russ. So shout out to Russ if you ever listen to my shit again. I mean, I know we've been down the road many times, me and Russ, you know, love Russ to death. If anybody, you guys go to the NARBC auctions, he's the geeky looking motherfucker with the glasses. That's always running around looking like he just did cocaine. Like he's trying to figure something out. He's always like running around like he's got a purpose to go somewhere and nobody knows where he's going. But yeah, he's always holding us up when it comes to editing and stuff like that. You know, so many great eco books out there, guys. Check your shelves. I'm gonna grab one real fast. It's not about snakes, bro, but it's one of my favorite eco books that exists that I think I need to highlight with you. The Lizard Man, The Life and the Times of Burt Langerworth, right here.
You talk about a legend.
This book that was written by this man right here, who told me not to worry about the tegus shitting out rotini pasta because he used to only feed them leftovers from the fucking Italian restaurant in town. Fuck, this guy was amazing. This guy spoke 15. This guy spoke 15 languages, bro. 15 fucking languages.
The hobby owes Burt Lang. Most people in the hobby today don't even know who Burt was, and they all owe him a good debt.
Got him to have Russ Gurley on just for this book, bro. Because this book was written on this man's deathbed by Mr. Russ Gurley and Felipe. This book is amazing. Awesome shit. Nick, you're amazing, bro. Anything you want to say to the public of ball python shitheads before you leave? Don't leave, though. Come on, bring it. Bring on the PSA. The more you know, but it ain't like the fucking shit came on from when we grew up.
People to stop working with things that they're work with what you are actually interested personally, what you are actually personally passionate about. Work with that. Quit chasing after things you think other people want, and work with what you want, and you'll do a lot better.
I think a lot of these people are doing that, but I think a lot of them aren't.
Cranking out things that they think other people are going to want instead of just focusing on what they themselves are personally interested in and passionate about. That is the road to longevity, sustainability, and happiness in the hobby, is to work with what you truly enjoy, not always chasing after what you think other people want.
I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. And I'm going to tell you what, I love that you pulled the passion out of me tonight too, because you really, I mean, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that people get to know that I'm more of a multi-species guy, and that a guy like you can still hate on ball pythons and still be on a ball python concentric network. But hey, man,
I don't hate ball pythons. I think I have like 15 of them.
Okay, well, you got 15 ball. Oh, wait. You hate the ball python. My apologies. You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right to correct me there, because it is a paraphrase that does get thrown around a little bit too much, I think. And you're right. It's not so much you hate ball pythons, but you hate what ball pythons have become, at least in the mind's eye of what's value is what's valuable. You know, now here, my quick hiccup on that is I produced a couple of really killer one-of-a-kind snakes that can't be reproduced. Obviously, the two-headed corn snake is one of them, right? But like I've got a couple of ball pythons that are genetic freaks. And the funny thing is they have no value because they can't be remade. And the sad thing there, not the two-headed snake, the two-headed snake has value to a Brian Barchak or somebody like that that's using as a show item or as a display item in a zoo or something like that. That's fine. It's truly an amazing animal, man. Like, it's absolutely stunning. To see it in itself is so fucking, it's so fucking captivating and so freaky at the same time. But you know,
expressing now is what people should aspire to. You can tell by seeing your face and what you're saying that you are completely enamored of this animal.
Nick, it hatched from an egg this big, and it pipped in 2 different locations. We thought it was a twin, but when my employee looked at the 2 heads, she's like, why are they normal-sized heads for a twin corn snake and an egg this big? And so she cut the gap between them, and they fucking popped out. Dude, it's awesome. Fucking phenomenal. Both heads have to eat. If both heads don't eat, the one head got really skinny and lethargic and stuff. So I'm assuming that they have 2 stomachs and that they have to metabolize separately, and that I'm hoping that they grow to a size that me and my friends at LSU can go image them and see exactly what's going on in there and just have a fucking field day.
I've hatched 4 of them, and I've never had one live very long. I've hatched 4 two-headed carpet pythons.
Dude, keep these people entertained for a minute. Just for a minute. Keep them entertained. Talk.
So, talking about bicephalic or two-headed snakes, which are just conjoined identical monozygotic twins. I've managed to hatch 4 of them. The longest lived was only about 6 weeks. It's really rare to see one like his corn snake where it can feed and pass a meal. Typically, where the point of spinal fusion occurs, there's a bony obstruction and they're not able to actually eat, so they just wither away and die. I would love to have one just as a display animal, but I've not been lucky enough to have one make it very long. I even hatched 2 in one clutch of 7 eggs. There were 2 two-headed carpet pythons out of 7 eggs. There's actually a picture of both of them side by side in the new book.
All right, I'm back.
Unfortunately, neither of them survived.
Bro, this thing is shedding right now. Okay.
That's so rare that it can eat and pass meals. That's awesome.
and they can look at each other.
Do they
Their
ever
head
attack
is-
each other?
What's that? Now
Do they ever-
listen, she washes their face after they eat so that they don't have that rodent smell taste thing to them, because they are easily separated enough. This one's shedding right now. That's why its skin's off its head. And I have to help them shed because it gets right to the cleft and it stops right there and it socks up. So you got to pay attention. And the only real blurb is like there's a hernia in the rib cage right here. You see the bubble that's popping out weird? See it? It's just a herniation in the rib cage, but it's way down. Like it looks like it's more by the heart than the lung. But I don't know. It's not caused any problems or any issues or anything like that. But they are absolutely incredible.
One day I'll
Absolutely
hatch a live one. I've hatched a lot of anomalies, but never a long-term survival of a two-headed one.
So I've hatched now probably about 7 or 8 two-headed snakes in my life, and this is the first survivor for us. It's the first one. So,
Yeah.
well, all right, brother. This was a lot of fun, Nick. Thank you so much. I got to sit here and wrangle this two-headed snake while I close this show out, but that's no problem. Thank you so much. Stick around for just a second post show for me so I could say bye. And thank you again, bro. This was awesome. This was truly awesome. I hope you can point some of your intellectuals to this and maybe convince them to do a show like this, because this is live, bro. Don't do none of that edited shit. Just do live and just don't even tell them. Just call them up on StreamYard and be like, hey, I just want a video chat with you. Don't even tell them that they're live or something. I don't know. I'm sure you can pull it off. You're a very convincing guy. All right. Mr. Nick Mutton, bring us back to Inland Reptile. You have a website, inlandreptile.com.
Yes.
And also check out the most complete. What are we putting? More complete.
Wasn't really my choice on what to name it either. It's kind of become the name.
It's kind of gone along with those books,
kind of,
right?
I don't know if I like that, but I lost that vote.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Well, hang tight a second.
Will do.
I'll talk to you in a minute. All righty. Everybody. Wow. That was great. That was a fucking great start to Off Topic Tuesday. Next Tuesday is surely to suck compared to this Tuesday. So please tune in with me next week for whatever poor, unfortunate fuck had to follow this guy. Because honestly, I'm with you, Paul Schneider. I think that was a great fucking show. I think it was wonderful. I'd love to have some other people in here. Morelia House, thank you for coming by. PCF Funny Royals, thanks for coming back again and sharing your thoughts. It was so much good info and so much geek info. So much of the shit that I want to hit on here on Off Topic Tuesday. And to be honest with you, I've already spoken to a couple of Australians that are experts in the Antaresia phases and actually have like morphs in Australia that we don't have outside of Australia that are going to come on the show and do some maybe video work with me to show you guys some of the morphs that we can't get from bearded dragons, carpet pythons, and we're going to talk about bearded dragon structure too, what Nick and I got to touch on briefly. I believe that was pre-show, and you guys can listen to on the audio version of the Bullshit podcast. So I have started uploading the podcast to audio. They're available everywhere. The only one up so far is the Chris Eaton #1 first episode, but I'm recording little snippets for each one for the beginning. So you got to give me a little patience in the beginning to get this workflow down. But thank you guys very much for tuning in tonight. This was great. Thanks, Mad River. Phenomenal show. You know, it had to be good to keep all Python people interested watching for 2 fucking hours. I'm right there with you. On that note, bye. Oops.